Hi everyone, my name is Chris Boggiano and welcome to the Starling for SLPs webinar. We're still waiting for a few people to trickle in, but while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and just tell you about myself briefly. Again, my name is Chris Boggiano. I'm one of the co-creators of this little device, which is called the Starling, that I'm here to tell you about tonight. And the most relevant things about my background that I guess you would care about are that I come from education and technology background. Run organizations focused on teaching everything from adults to young children. And while at graduate school at Stanford University is where we came up for the idea for the Starling, and it's based on all of the compelling research about the early engagement with a child, early verbal engagement with a child. The only other thing worth mentioning to this particular audience is that my mother and sister are both speech therapists. My sister works in a hospital in Jersey City, New Jersey. My mother works for the public school system in Jersey City, New Jersey. So they work with typically different low-income populations, but one in a medical setting and one in an education setting. In terms of the webinar itself, I just want to orient you. There should be a chat box somewhere on this side of your screen. Hopefully I'm pointing to the right area. At any point in the webinar, ask questions. I've got a little screen here, so I'll be able to see those questions, and I'll try to answer them when there's a convenient spot. And then again at the end, I'll go ahead and answer any questions that come up. So let me show you how this device can improve your practice. Just as a brief overview, this is the device itself. This is a clip. It's this silicon clip that clips into it, and the back of it is a very, very strong and springy clip. And you would pop it into the clip as quickly as I just did right there. You would put it onto a child's shirt, typically their front collar, because that's where you're when you're talking to them, that's where they're located. Some parents, with a young baby, they might put it on the back of the child's collar if the child is teething and drooling, and sometimes you can put it on their pants band. There's a base station that basically functions as a place. It's kind of home for the device when it needs to be charged, and so you can just drop it into that base station and it'll charge it, and then the base station just plugs into a wall with your standard adapter. You probably have 10 of these charging cables sitting in a drawer somewhere in your house. So for early intervention, we know that the sweet spot's kind of the earliest years of life, from birth to 4, but the Starling has been used with kids, I think, up to 11 or even 13 in special needs situations. So developmentally, the children aren't necessarily as far along as their biological age might suggest. The basic premise of the device is that it functions like a Fitbit, except instead of counting steps, it counts words. So the idea is to count the number of words that parents and caregivers say to their kids in a given day. And the way that we designed it without a screen to minimize the distraction to both parents and kids, but the way that parents can see that information is through a companion app that we have, where we have 2 or 3 things that are presented. The first is just the overall word count. The second is kind of a graph that shows when words were said throughout the day, and then the third are messages that we send to parents to encourage them to interact more with their kids. It's one thing to tell a parent to talk more. It's another thing to say to a parent, go sing the hokey pokey while you're getting your son or daughter dressed tonight. And that little bit of an extra nudge, over time, we can basically teach parents on how to engage their children in a higher quality way that both reduces the hurdle to more talking and it develops good habits. And there's a lot of research to show the benefits of kind of daily micro messaging and the profound impact that they can have. So that's my overview of the device. I'll go into a little bit more of the details of how it functions, but I wanted to take a moment here. We have Erika Cartman is one of the folks. We've had a lot of input from different specialists, pediatricians, researchers, and speech therapists in the development of this device. And Erika is one of the speech therapists who works with us. And here's a short audio clip from her.
When I first heard of the Starling, I was immediately drawn. A piece of technology that would actually show parents that they're contributing to their child's development. As a speech language pathologist, of course it's my job to talk to their kids, but I've said it over and over again. What I do 1 to 2 days a week is not going to make the difference. It takes a village, and parents are the child's first teachers. Now, we've all been there in a session explaining carryover activities to do at home to parents and getting that nod, and somehow knowing that everything you just said wasn't going to happen. Sadly, the follow-through on the carryover activities, at least in my experience, is sparse. They forget, or somehow it just doesn't keep priority. But now we can show parents numbers. We can get them excited about achieving daily word goals. And my favorite part is that we can send them push notifications to remind them to do the carryover activities. For instance, let's just say it's nearing dinner time. Through the Starling app, you could gently remind them, hey, don't forget we're working on present progressive ing with Timmy. So use words like eating, drinking, cutting, chewing, and munching today at mealtime. Or something like, remember that we're encouraging two-word phrases, and that's one of our goals this week. So try prompting for utterances like more milk, or all done cheese, or eat carrots. So finally, something that would objectively show them that words matter. And I can honestly admit that when I put a Starling on my own kid, I talk more. After talking all day long at work, it's taxing to do the same thing at home.
So that's Erika, Erika's testimonial, both as a parent and Starling user and as a speech therapist. So she sees it from both sides, which is kind of how I live it. I have 2 young children. My 2-year-old is the primary Starling wearer in my household. She's super verbal at this point. It's like talking to a little, a little person, even though she's a couple months short of 2.5 at the, and so I regularly get approached by other parents who comment on how verbal she is whenever they see us out in public, and I give a lot of credit to that. I'm an introvert. It wouldn't necessarily naturally occur to me to talk to a child, and so my experience is similar to Erika's, especially with coming home from work and feeling tired and exhausted, and talking isn't necessarily the first thing that would come to mind. Just one other thing I wanted to say about the device itself, from earlier, it doesn't record, so it's privacy sensitive. It's waterproof, it's drool proof, it's drop proof. It's pretty much military grade. So if you have a concern, common ones I hear are, would a child keep that on? The clip is really strong. My child would break that. It's really sturdy. I often drop it on a floor when I'm giving an in-person presentation, just to kind of show parents this isn't a sensitive piece of technology like a phone. It's sensitive, but we've kind of hardened it to put up with the rigors of keeping up with young children. But back to Erika's testimonial, as she said, it takes a village, and the Starling can help get parents involved in speech therapy and kind of extend your practice beyond the sessions that you're having. So the first thing that or the 3 things that I want to cover that the Starling can measure, scale your practice. So the first is the idea of measuring. Very simply, if you have a thing that's counting words, you can now measure what's going on in the home, and parents can measure themselves and become aware of their own behavior. A lot of parents overestimate how much they say to their kids. Most parents overestimate how much they say to their kids. So this can be a little bit of a reality check. And then there's that measurement where they can come and bring that data back to their next therapy session, and that could be woven into the fabric of the treatment over the course of months. The second is to scale your practice. You're extending beyond that 45 minutes or 1 hour per week where you might meet with a child into all of the other times times during the week when a child is with parents and caregivers. And this is just at the very simplest, it's a visual reminder to talk more to their kids. I see it when I come home and I see my daughter sitting at the dinner table and I'm tired and I see it and I know that I talk in instances when I otherwise wouldn't have said something, simply because I saw the Starling on. Add to that, little messages, from the app. There's nothing to say that we couldn't send messages from you. We happen to send messages just to parents, again, with little activities to remind them, but all of that cumulatively adds up to extend what happens so that it's not just during a session, but it's during the other days of the week. And then reinforcing, which is again the idea of carryover activities from your session and reinforce that and to weave that into the experience with the Starling to reinforce what happens beyond the bounds of a treatment session itself. So we're going to move into questions in just a minute, and if you have any, again, somewhere here on the left side of your screen is a chat box. So I would encourage you to type any questions that you might have in there. And if you don't, I'll just go ahead and type my my email address in. Feel free to email me. It's just chris@versame.com. I talk to folks day in and day out. I love talking to parents and people who work with parents. I get really excited about sharing what I've learned with them, and ideally making their lives a little bit easier with some of the stuff that we've developed. I'm always excited to talk about that. Two questions we always get from SLPs is, how does it work for parents, and how do I use it in my practice? So I'm going to dive into those two first, and I'll if I see any questions come in, I'll go ahead and answer them. How does it work for parents? It's really easy. I sort of addressed this tangentially earlier. For me, I clip it onto my daughter's shirt in the morning. It takes 5 seconds. At night, when she's going in for a bath, I take it off her shirt, and I put it onto my own collar while she's going through the bathtub and getting stories read. And then when she's done and going to bed for the night, I pop it into the charger. It sits in the charger overnight, and then in the morning, I just rinse and repeat. The device battery lasts 4 or 5 days. So if we travel, if we go to grandma's house for the weekend, I don't typically take the base station with me. But in my house, even though the device battery lasts that long, I charge it every night just because it's our routine, kind of like my phone, where it's just that's the habit. But it's, no kidding, all of 10 seconds in my day to use the device itself. And then I check the app, and basically anytime you open the app, it's going to pull the latest information from the device and present that information. So I oftentimes check it when I walk in from the walk in the door in the evening to see how the day has gone, and kind of if we're behind it, I might read a couple of extra stories, or it just makes me extra conscious. And then there are other days where I see like, oh, they've had a great day, and then I can ease off a little bit, and it helps helps me calibrate. But just even knowing that either pushes me to interact more and make the most of that time, or it relieves the stress in my life to know that even though I'm not there a lot of the hours of the day with my kids, that that they're getting interaction from the other people in their lives. So how do speech therapists use it in their practice? It's basically two models that we've seen. The first is a loan program where you use this in the course of therapy. So it might be the kind of thing, you're seeing a patient for 6 months. You use this at the beginning to kind of get a baseline of where they're at. You check in again. You send it home with them, a couple months later. You send it home a couple months later. You send it home a couple months later. You kind of track their progress over time to see how much things are changing throughout the course of your therapy. The second model that we have, it's the more common of the two, I think, is we have an affiliate program where we basically have a referral commission for therapists to recommend it to parents. If those parents purchase the device, there's a referral commission for them for doing that. The analogy that I give is that if you buy a Sonicare toothbrush at your dentist, you walk in, the dentist is obviously getting something for selling that. If you buy dog food, at the vet, or if you buy anything for your pet at the vet, it's kind of the same thing, and that's those providers have recommended products that they have, but they also benefit monetarily for selling that to their patients or customers. So I'll just one last time, if you have any questions, I know we have folks kind of coming and going. There's a chat box on the left side of the screen, so feel free to ask questions. We also give folks a lot of individualized support. So we are pretty much available 24/7. Our team, we talk on the phone, we have Skype sessions, we message back and forth with parents, we message back and forth with caregivers and practitioners who are working with parents. We essentially make ourselves available in every way imaginable to help the folks that are working with the Starling succeed. And the benefit to the folks that work with us is that we're a young startup. We released the Starling last summer. It's a fairly new technology, and so there's constantly, every month or so, we're rolling out new features so that the experience gets better and better. But the folks that interact with us and give us feedback based on their day-to-day experience, a lot of times they wake up a month later and they see that the feature that they wished was there, it suddenly got incorporated into our system. So that's that's kind of the gist of what I had to cover tonight. I see a question from Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. It says, sorry, Chris, I'm late and you might have covered this. can the device work with more than one child? So the answer is yes. Let's imagine you have a practice where you want to give it to child A this month and child B next month, just to really simplify. You can rotate it between children, and the second family to use the device wouldn't see the data from the first family. And it's a really simple way to kind of partition things so that none of that information, for privacy reasons. We can also have multiple devices hooked up to one Starling, so you could have mom and dad with different phones. It could be an iPhone and an Android. It doesn't matter. It could be mom, dad, and speech therapist. It could be 3 devices. It could be just the therapist. Any combination. But you could have multiple kids in a household with Starlings. So any configuration you can think of there, we've pretty much thought about, and the device will work with. So I don't know if there's any other questions. I'll type, my email address is already in there. It's at the top of the chat window. It's just chris@versame.com. If you have any questions, if you'd like to set up a time to chat, or if you have anything that you feel like I didn't cover during this webinar this evening, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to answer them. I look forward to hearing from you. Like I said, I chat with folks all the time. It's what I do, so it's really a pleasure to me. But thank you very much, and have a good evening, everyone.